We are here again. It's Thursday and it's Think and Link Pants Optional, where we leave it up to you. And we have two amazing guests, David and Fernando. They will introduce themselves in a moment. And we're going to be putting in some really good strict protocols for this one to make sure, because we've got a large audience. We ask that everyone remain on mute and ask your questions in the chat on the right. At any given point in time, please do ask questions. We are not going to be taking any journalistic questions, just to be clear up front, because we do have the New York Times here. And the man behind the red logo, that is Thomas, and he is all powerful. He will mute you if you do not mute yourself, and or kick you out if you become a bad guest. We don't want anybody like that, but that won't happen. A moment for our sponsor before we get into this. Our sponsor is Capsule, and of course they obligate me to say a couple of things about this special projects firm here in Minneapolis. We work with clients on challenges that relates to brand naming, packaging, visual language, digital. And we're currently working on a new chocolate that will change how you consume chocolate. More on that in the future. It's a rather fascinating one. And then I'm going to hand it over after Fernando and David give their introductions. Kelly's going to do the first question for us, and that'll get us all up and running and having fun. So, gentlemen, David, you want to start? Give a little bit of your background for our audience.
Yeah, sure. I'm David Rubin, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of the New York Times. To our knowledge, I'm actually the first Chief Marketing Officer of the New York Times, which is sort of amazing when you realize the company is 160 plus years old. Caveat that who knows, we don't have every year documented, but I think it's a safe assumption. I came, so most of my career was in consumer products. Actually, I worked with fur at Unilever for many years. The two main things I did there was I did the launch of Axe body spray into the US. And I also led our hair care division for a while. I then went to Pinterest in 2014 for a couple years, where I looked after their brand and marketing and tried to broaden the appeal of the company and the product. And then I've been at the New York Times since April of 2016. And I live in the suburbs of New York in New Jersey, and have, with my wife and two daughters who are Zoom learning.
Wow, that wonderful experience, Zoom school. Fernando.
Yes, well, first of all, thanks for having me. My name is Fernando Machado. I'm the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Restaurant Brands International. We have three brands here at Restaurant Brands. We have Burger King, which is kind of like the most known brand, but we also have Popeyes and Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons, for the ones that don't know, is a very strong brand in Canada. We also have a presence in the US and expanding it internationally. I have been with RBI for about 7 years now. Before Restaurant Brands, I spent my whole career in Unilever. So I was in Unilever for 18 years. I'm Brazilian. I left Brazil a while back. I lived like everywhere in Brazil and traveled quite a bit outside of Brazil with Unilever, and now here in Miami with RBI. I'm married, Miami, living, two kids, two boys. So I'm almost the opposite of David. You can probably hear one crying on the back. He's very excited about, like, every time I have an important call, he gets very excited. But I think we're all used to that by now.
Yes.
Yeah, like, I mean, I live on this virtual restaurant here.
That's fantastic. You win the prize for best backdrop, Fernando, for sure. Thank you both. Very excited to have you here with us today. And can I call you Fur or Fern or Fur?
Yeah, most people call me Fur. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, we're going to roll with that today, Fur. Thank you. That's fantastic. Again, very excited. A lot of topics we'd like to cover. I don't know that we'll get through all of it, and I'm sure we'll have some questions from our audience. But I'm going to dive right in, if we can, talk a little bit about digital transformation. Both of you have led brands through this challenging process of shifting into this digital world that we live in now. And I'm curious, or I would love perspective from both of you first. Your definition, share your definition of digital transformation, and have you seen that evolve over the last few months, certainly during this pandemic? And then where are you now, and how is this journey going for both of you? Whoever wants to take that first.
I suspect this is one where we may be different in some ways. Our businesses are. I actually don't really. The term doesn't mean a lot to me. Particularly, at the New York Times. I mean, certainly we are on a digital transformation, if you want to be, precise about it. But our product is digital at this point. It's not our marketing philosophy. It's our product is getting people around the world to have a subscription to our digital news offering. And that is our principal product. And so it's not really a digital transformation as much as it is a digital offering and a digital business for us. We have a very healthy engineering department. We do, we also have a very healthy newsroom, but and everyone in the company, there's not a group that are thinking about digital. It is the thing that all of us do, no matter what your role is, what kind of function you're in. And I think the lesson, and obviously not everyone is in a place where their product is sold digitally. I still think the mindset of not thinking about yourself as trying to transition to something, but because that implies that it's separate from something else you do, but seeing it as the thing you do is when you really unlock a digital experience.
That's great.
Yeah, in our case here, I do feel a bit of the transformation, and it's something that we've been investing for quite some time. It's like not new, but that definitely got accelerated during this year because of the pandemic. We invest a lot in terms of improving connection and experience through technology, through digital, right? Whether that is like the way we advertise or like how we engage with people in social media or how we do transaction, right? I mean, mobile ordering payment is something that's growing a lot. How much we invest in terms of having digital coupons. We still have paper coupons, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, there is a lot of waste when you're doing paper coupons, just in the process of printing, delivering. I'm serving the same coupons to everyone, and I can leverage digital to do something that's much more customized to people. I could go on and on and on, and again, it's something that digital expenditure was already increasing year after year, but this year has been a boom. Digital sales, I mean, selling through our digital channels was increasing year after year, but this year we had our dine-in closed, right? I mean, in the US, in many countries, we had the restaurant completely shut down, and we're maybe doing just delivery. So it really forced us to make it the thing, which is what David touched on, right? I mean, I think that when you don't treat it as a satellite thing that you do on your spare time, which is inexistent, right? I mean, we're all in this crazy maniac world. When you treat it as core to the way you do business, I think that's when you can transform. And that's what we're trying to do here at RBI.
That's great. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Right. So it's when we talk about a cultural technical barrier, I mean, this is a shift to, this is the way we work, we live, we interact. It's no longer, like you said, a tangential offering. It is the way that we operate. So thank you for sharing your perspective. That's very helpful.
Yeah. David, you're the butterfly already. You're already in that transformation. You've already been through. You're already flying around, and obviously in a place that is beyond, which is fascinating because you were early to it, or at least the New York Times was early to this.
Well, it's just, in our business, again, in our case, it has become our business model, right? It's not an enabler to our business model.
Right.
And so that obviously puts a different level for us. But I think it's the thing you hear from both of us is the importance of mindset, because ultimately it's about what you prioritize and what you're willing to make trade-offs to do, because nothing's ever easy. And the thing that I think the message is, the more core you see it, the more you're going to be willing to make the trade-offs, to let other things, to sacrifice other things in order to get it done, or make, and I think that that's ultimately what becomes important. And one thing I think has been true for a lot of companies is that the pandemic situation has forced some of those decisions. We've even had it on our own, where we've had to take all of our call centers have to now be able to respond remotely. That wasn't something that we were enabling before, and it was an investment that was going to take us actually multiple years. We ended up having to do it in 3 weeks because there was no choice, right? Many of our call centers were not going to be able to allow their employees to operate back in the spring in person. And so if we wanted to keep customer service running, we would have to figure out how to do that. And so we did. But I think it's a good lesson, because if you don't give yourself those sort of it's not a choices, then they don't happen.
Yeah. That's answering another question. That accelerant we hear a lot is this: COVID has been an accelerant for a lot of other changes, digital or otherwise. So that was one for you for sure, call centers. Fernando, was there anything that surprised you and that was a huge accelerant in this year? I'm assuming there's been a lot in restaurants.
Yeah, I think that everything that has to do with digital sales has been dramatically accelerated. I think that prior to the pandemic, we were still having to convince people that delivery was something important to. Pandemic hits. I don't know about you guys, but I've been getting Instacart, Uber Eats like way more often than I used to get before. So the moment that hits, you don't have a choice. It's exactly the same as what David just said. Well, we're planning to move the call center in 3 years. There is a phasing plan, and we're going to do a test here and prove that. No. You have 3 weeks to do this. You saw the numbers of restaurants where we enable delivery, increasing exponentially. Not just like one operator, but enabling white label delivery through our app, enabling Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, whatever is available. So it moves, and what is the percentage that you have to pay? Well, that's all important, but let's agree on something quick and make it happen, because else you will have zero sales. So it really changed the paradigm and helped us accelerate big time digital sales.
That's great.
Much operational as is in marketing. It's no longer just a marketing play. It's right. This is operates the core, as you said, David, to the business model. It's interesting to hear that. David, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the lesson that is applicable, even when, and hopefully when we don't have, a pandemic, because let's hope we're not repeating this anytime soon, is the need to have a shared sense of what you want to do and a real argument for why it has to happen. It really has to be non-negotiable if you want to move at the fastest possible speed. Yeah. And that's not always the right thing to have in all things. But like in our case, we've been on the digital transformation. I'll use the word that I said I don't like, but since our innovation report came out, that was written internally and then got leaked publicly, and it's 6 years ago or so, and it was a very scathing assessment of how we were keeping up with a lot of the digital upstarts and competing in digital news. And once that happened, coupled with the real collapse we're seeing in journalism as an industry, it really created a fear inside the company. If we don't get this fixed, we could very easily have to cut our newsroom, be out of business, a whole bunch of things that are not where we want to be. And in an industry where half of the journalism jobs have gone away in the last decade in this country, it's not a joke, right? It's a very real possibility, and that has galvanized us. And so the lesson that I've taken as a leader is, how do you create, I mean, hopefully you don't need a pandemic, hopefully you don't need to truly believe that your company might go out of business, but how do you create that hunger and that feeling? And I think a lot of startups, that's really their secret sauce, is that they're constantly worried that they might be put out of business, but not like putting it on a PowerPoint deck, they believe it. And I think that's I think that sort of organizational energy is what's been created here for a bunch of things that we just had to do. And so how do you recreate that when it's, you know, when it's different circumstances?
Fascinating. So someone leaking a report, which I can see that being a big, you got to thank that person, of course, because that was obviously a central point of motivation, right?
Yeah, I mean, what happened, you know, it was I wasn't there, but it was a horrible, you know, few weeks, months of, you know, defensive-ness and how could this happen? And now actually our publisher, who wasn't the publisher at the time and who wrote the report, he says it's one of the best things that happened to us because it held us accountable.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, that you know, that transparency can be helpful because it made it a thing that we had to wrestle with and couldn't hide from, even, you know, when the doors were open.
Yeah, that's great. Fernando, there's, you know, the changing landscape of food and your changing of the perception of fast food. Can you talk about that a bit? Because that is an interesting motivator, I would imagine. There
it is.
well.
Look, I mean, I come from a school of marketing. David and I come from a school of marketing that believes in purpose and believes on doing the right thing. You know what I mean? That's how I grew up in marketing. And I still remember the day I resigned at Unilever, going to my best friend internally and telling her, we were in London, I told her, hey, I'm leaving. And she's like, oh my God, like seriously, been here for 18 years. Where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Burger King. It was just Burger King back then. And then she paused and looked at me and was like, what the fuck are you going to do at Burger King? Like, seriously? Like, why don't you go to Whole Foods? Why don't you go to a startup that's changing food and this and that? And I told her, well, those guys don't need me. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go on a place that I can have a big impact, where I know people are committed to have a big impact. And it was the best choice that I've made in my career. You know, I met a very talented group of people here in Miami. Daniel Schwartz, who today is the co-chairman for 3G Capital, was the CEO. Jose Sil, who is the CEO, was one of the brand presidents. Like, people who are very eager to build brands for the long run, to build the most loved brands in the QSR space, and invest to deliver results on the short term, but also on the long run. So back then, like, this is 4, 5, 6 years ago, we started doing things like removing artificial ingredients from our products, which is not easy to do. We created nutritional roadmaps, reducing sodium, sugar, fat, you know, like almost like a detox of the products. And we started to do work on sustainability. We have a huge stream of work around diversity and inclusion. We created a whole framework that we call Restaurant Brands for Good, that has a food pillar, a planet pillar, and a people and communities pillar. And we are trying to be the change we want to see around us. You know what I mean? Like, and I still keep tabs with my friend. Her name is Katrine. And I always, every time we do something like this past week, we rolled out in the US a Whopper with no colors, flavors, or preservatives from artificial sources. Also no MSG, no high fructose corn syrup. It's not easy to do that. Everything that you touch on the product, it changes taste, it increases cost, it makes more complicated for operations. It's like decreases shelf life. It's a nightmare. If it were easy, everyone would have done it already. And that's why we need to go for places where we can make a big difference. You know, like, and we believe that, and I'm not going to stop here. We're going to continue to push to do the whole portfolio clean from artificial ingredients globally, not just in the US. We are doing amazing things, I think, around sustainability. And there is a lot of pipeline of things that are coming that you will see soon enough. And we want to create brands that are here to stay. You know, if I don't do that work now, I doubt will continue to be relevant 5, 10 years from now.
Right.
That is profoundly wise. Going in to the place where people need it, right? Where the brands that need that kind of help is, it's a very wise perspective on it. That is cool. That is really cool.
Exactly. I'd like to stay on the brand. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but would love to ask the question of both of you. Fernando, I've heard you speak in the past. I've seen, I think it was a Fast Company interview or something to that effect, about the importance of truly understanding your brand to be able to successfully articulate your brand message and then ultimately drive business results. Can you talk about some of the key questions that an organization should really ask themselves to truly understand their brand and what it represents? And then obviously, how do you push that messaging out into the world so that it resonates? And then I'd love to, David, ask you the same question for New York
and I think it's like one of the classic work streams that any marketeer has to do when he or she goes to work in a new company or a new brand. You know, like, because I always think that even if there was someone that came and he placed me tomorrow here, that person can sharpen even further where I left, you know what I mean? And in a brand like Burger King that has been in the marketplace since 1954, yes, I have been here for 7 years. That's probably longer than the average CMO tenure, but it's a drop in the ocean in the lifespan of the brand. So I think one of the silly things that sometimes marketing people do is to come and think that they can reinvent the wheel and start from scratch and give me the blank sheet of paper and lock yourself in a room with a bunch of planners from the agency and come up with a new positioning. That's not what we did. What we did was almost do a bit of like brand anthropology, you know, like to understand how this brand was built, to understand why, even before we did any of the work, if I went to people and say, talk about Burger King, people usually like have a smile. You know, like to understand why when I put the paper crown on people's heads, they smile. You know, to understand why our biggest fans, when they are in our restaurant, they are having fun and they are a little bit out there. You know, there is a reason for that. There is a reason why the Whopper is America's favorite burger. There is a reason why people talk about flame broiling. So we went and did this exercise, and then we tried to articulate in simpler ways what the brand was about, but it was really like a 90% listening, right? I mean, and feeding from what people already thought, and 10% trying to move it forward and make it more progressive and how can we have a vision, right? I mean, so it's just not just a mirror to what people are seeing. So that's kind of like the exercise that we did for BK. That's similar to the exercise that we did for Popeyes. I've been working on Popeyes for a year now too, and it's a brand that's quintessentially from Louisiana, and that comes with a spirit, with a certain set of values, with a taste, with a sound, and I can try to change that, which I think would be silly. Instead, what we try to do is to amplify that and make that even more modern, cooler, engaging. So that's kind of like the positioning work that we do.
No, that's impressive. Thank you for sharing it. And David, obviously, you're a marketer in a non-marketing driven company. When we talk about brand, can you share a little bit about how you you set expectations, those perceptions internally, and how you project that to your external audience?
Yeah, I think the thing that maybe I'll talk about two things, but just building on what Fernando just talked about, we do all the same things. I think the thing that's interesting about the Times is like our brand's actually not really changed since 1896, when the current ownership family bought the company. It is a public company today, but the same controlling family. And so it's not so much like what's your brand about. What has changed in the last few years is how we express it. And what really has unlocked how we think about that for us is the context around the brand. And so for us, what we've thought about is, you know, we see ourselves, and I bring this from my consumer product days, is that we're trying to build a category. We don't see ourselves as in a media category or a news category that's really well established and it's a trade-off from brand to brand, we see ourselves as in a category that barely exists, which is the category of subscription-supported quality original journalism. I know it rolls right off the tongue. And that there are very few players in it. There are other players, but the goal is to grow that pie. The goal is to have all of the brands in that space grow more. There are about 185 million people in the US alone who read digital news, and fewer than 30 million pay for it. So imagine if that were the same circumstances in Burger King's case, right? Imagine if 70% of the people who walked into a Burger King restaurant didn't pay and got their burger for free. And then imagine that they could walk over to McDonald's and get a burger for free all the time. That is literally our world. And so we need you to believe that what we do is so special and so different that you need to go pay for it. When our competitors are not only not even charging you, they're often not even asking for your email address. You can turn on the TV, you can just go to a website. And so you have to believe that what you get from us is so different. And that's led our marketing to then talk about what makes that difference, which is the people who work there and the process we go through. And that's why our whole campaign has been about that. It's effectively a how the sausage gets made kind of campaign, but applied to a category where people are quite interested in it, which is journalism, and applied to what is the thoroughness and the rigor that people go through, that our journalists go through, that gives you a different level of understanding than you might get elsewhere. And so that's what's really unlocked for us. It's not the 5 words that are on the brand identity, it's the context around it that has caused us to rethink how we talk about what we do and to articulate our marketing in through a different lens.
One of the coolest stories that I've heard David talking about was how the work that they did changed the perception of marketing with the journalists, right? Because I can almost quote you, David. Like, I remember you saying something like, yeah, in the beginning, because the marketing people want to talk to you, or, like, that's all bullshit. We only focus here on writing the news, being true, and uncovering stories, blah, blah, blah. And then when they shift the campaign with Droga 5 to show what the journalists have to go through and how a story is made, they basically put the journalist as the hero, right? Of the story, and how that changed the perception and relationship on top of the sales, obviously, right? But changed the perception and relationship that marketing had with the guys.
Totally. Totally. One of probably my proudest moment. If you all know the Pulitzer Prize winning journalism that Megan Twohey and Jodi Kantor did, uncovering Harvey Weinstein's misdeeds, literal journalism that literally changes our society and has helped spark the Me Too movement and et cetera, and really caused us to think about our society differently. One of their posts that they put on Twitter, I think it was, shows this picture that I'm sure will be taught in journalism schools for years to come. It's the photo of them hitting send. There's like 5 of them over a computer screen, and they're hitting send on the article, waiting to see what response happens, and will he sue, and what's going to happen. And in the foreground of that image is a button from the campaign that says "The truth is hard," that is sitting on I think it's a pocketbook or a bag of some kind. And the journalist not only has our ad slogan on their merchandise, but somebody had gone in a pen and written "really" in "The truth is hard." So it was "The truth is really hard." And this is now in this photo that's probably going to be in journalism museums in the future. And it's basically a marketing slogan. And so the idea that we've been able to talk about the journalism and this really important, journalism is a mission-driven enterprise, right? We believe that it is important, it's critical to democracy. and we've got a marketing slogan that has been able to articulate what it is they think they're about, that they've got on their person when they're doing something as important as that. I mean, it was a huge compliment.
I'm kidding. Wow.
That is wonderful. There's a lot of other questions coming in from our audience. Another thought that I think is really interesting as it relates to journalism. There's always this talk of, if you're getting it for free, then you are the product when it comes to Facebook and any other social media, and for that matter, any other news, right? If you're getting fed commercials, you are the product. And you flip that and said, no, the journalist is the product, or the news, the truth is the product. And that's, I mean, it's fascinating. The fact that you've fought what is sometimes the narrative with the truth. And that's really compelling, and something we all should be paying for, right, in our lives, to have that available.
Thank you for that plug.
Anytime.
I know there are 115 people on this call, so we'll take every start. But the important distinction I just want to make is, I know that the campaign is often referred to as the truth. We see the truth in that line. We actually call it the truth is, and then we change what the is, because we see the truth as a shorthand for the journalistic process, not for like the facts per se. I mean, obviously they're related. And so when we make the campaigns, we ask ourselves that question: is what we're highlighting the journalistic process, which of course involves the journalists themselves. We don't want to get into a debate in our journalism about what is the truth, or does the New York Times make mistakes? Because we do. We do make mistakes, and we want to be held accountable when we do, and we want to do better when we do. It's not about that. It's about the process that we think we go through, which we think accelerates our readers' their understanding of the truth.
Interesting. Yeah.
So and Kelly, maybe you want to ask the next question instead of me just hogging.
No, I have a question within a question, but this comes from Michelle, actually, in our audience, and I think this is tied to some conversations even further that we had prior to today's call. Michelle asked, in addition to facets of innovation being accelerated by COVID, what is being accelerated around inclusion, diversity, and accessibility? And again, we've talked about certainly some marketing campaigns that support these initiatives, but would love to just get your perspective on what you're both seeing in terms of acceleration around these very important facets of our society. Who wants to take that first?
Yeah, I can give my take on that. Like, I think that there are things that are pandemic related and things that are social issue related, right? I mean, they're different. I think on the pandemic side, I believe that we will see the rise of even more authentic leadership style when it comes to work. You know what I mean? Like in the past, if I were doing this video conference with you guys and my son was crying on the back, I would be mortified. You know what I mean? Like we were all like, who was not on that video conference that, oh yeah, that person is calling in, and everyone's like, oh fuck, like, okay. Like, and then the person calls in, and then there's a dog that barks in the back, and the person, oh, I'm so sorry. Like now no one cares about any of that. Our personal lives got a bit mixed with the professional life. And I think that will probably allow for more flexibility, more empathy. I think that people realize that other people have personal lives, like it's a little detail, and that everyone is fighting a fight that you're not aware of. So I think that will help a lot with work environment. And I'm sure that there are some workplaces where flexibility and working from home was already the norm, but in most places it wasn't. So I think that is like, in my view, pandemic related. The other thing is social related, right? I mean, I think that with all the things that happen with Black Lives Matter and the terrible incidents like in the US and even across the globe, I feel that each person and company and brand reacted a bit different. You know, like even the feeling that you had, like I can talk about myself, like I felt very angry, you know, like angry maybe with humanity, you know what I mean? Like, and I try to channel my anger to make a difference where I feel I have a direct impact. You know what I mean? Like here at RBI, I mentioned, right? I mean, we have the Restaurant Brands for Good framework. One of the pillars is people and communities. We were already working on D&I, on diversity and inclusion. Like, I think we are getting better and better with having more women in leadership. Not perfect, but getting better. I think we did an awesome job over the past few years becoming more inclusive LGBTQ. We have 100% corporate equality index for Restaurant Brands International. And I think we are lagging behind on African-American representation for it. We over-index Hispanic internally, so that's kudos to the company. But we specifically, when it comes to African-Americans, we're lagging behind. So not just me, right? I mean, I joined the Diversity and Inclusion Steering Committee that we have, which is formed by the leadership team. And we are working to change that, you know, like putting together plans, targets to change that. I find it very difficult to think about our brands becoming very vocal on topics before we do the homework internally. You know, like I'm a firm believer of actions, not ads. You know, like I'm nothing against ads. I'm happy when we do something that help our consumers understand what we're doing. But I think we need to do the work first. So in terms of the social issues, we created our commitments. We made them public. We have our board with targets around diversity and inclusion. We hired a consultancy company to help us on that. We appointed like new people just to work on that exclusively, and we are making progress. You know, I think that the first step in the journey is to acknowledge that you have a problem, and then putting together a plan and take it from there.
Smart approach. So it's listening first, not being reactionary, not jumping on the bandwagon. Let's understand these issues before we respond. That's great, Fer. Thank you. David, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You know, you probably don't think of Burger King and the New York Times most of the time as two companies that have a lot of similarities. But every time we get together, I like Fer and I, maybe it's just where we come from. We think kind of similarly. I think so I don't have a lot to add. I mean, obviously the difference with us is, you know, we tend as a company to speak through the journalism, right? For obvious reasons. And the most important thing to us is the independence of the journalism. And so I don't want to say too much about, you know, the newsroom's efforts in this regard, but there's a lot of attention being put to, you know, we always put our attention to whatever the most important stories of the day are, and you know, diversity and inclusion and is a huge story at the moment, and in lots of angles, and so we're covering that. You know, it's just one small example. You know, our coverage of the pandemic, it's large. It deserves a fair amount of recognition for pointing out the disparities of how the virus has impacted communities of color and the Black community in particular. And so we speak through that reporting, and then we also have our opinion section, which then editorializes on what we think should happen. And then our on the company side, we tend to try to act and look more at like what show through our actions, and not only do we act first, before we make a campaign, we tend to sort of let our actions speak for themselves because we speak through the journalism. And so we're doing a lot of efforts to really shine the light on ourselves internally, and really ask ourselves whether the experience that our employees have is uniform depending on your race, your background, and how do we accelerate our path to make sure that they are all having a similar experience, no matter what diversity you bring to the table. And so we're doing a lot of work in that regard. Some of this very similar actions to what Fer described.
Great. Thank you both for sharing. Appreciate
it. That is wonderful. So David, all the things that you told me earlier about the fact that um, digital is growing for you and dramatically improving, and you're seeing some good numbers. There was a goal I found out there. Someone put out 800 million in digital subscription revenue in 2020. I'm curious where you are in that goal. I know you just had a board meeting the other day where you were in a collared shirt and more professional.
Oh,
How
right,
are things
yes.
going on that? And even if you're not there, I'd be curious where things are going.
Yeah, no,
well. I want everyone to hear that, I guess.
Well, that goal, we're past that goal at this point.
Nice.
We're on to 10 million subscribers. So we're looking at less in revenue, and again, back to the sort of category growth story. We announced at our last earnings that we had passed 6 million. So we're well on our path. For context, when we launched our paywall, the pundits in the media industry who were not negative on the process, so the most bullish ones, said they thought we could get to 1 million subscribers. We are currently at 6.
Wow.
Around 1 million are also have a print subscription. Almost everyone uses the digital product at this point if you're a subscriber. You know, and I think this is also back to your question about the role of marketing. There are 2 ways to look at those numbers. One is to say 6 million makes us incredibly successful, well beyond our plans. And the other way to look at it is like, we're a product that's used by 150 million plus people a month. And we only have 6 million people paying for it. And so we both want to celebrate the success and also be very scared by the daunting amount of opportunity we still have in front of us. For context, at the height of the print era, in the United States alone, there were 60 million print subscriptions. And today, you know, there's fewer than 30 million digital subscriptions in the US, and we have 6 million, you know, total subscribers. So it gives you an idea that, like, why shouldn't at least 60 million people have a subscription? That feels very doable in concept. We wouldn't have all of them, of course. Yeah. And so it gives us a size of the ambition, but also a sense of how far we have come, you know, from where we used to be.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so Fernando, we got to talk about plant-based meats in some form. We got to have a conversation about Impossible and about what's happening around that, because that is amazing and intriguing and a rather bold move. Can you tell me how it's going? Is there still as much energy around it, and excitement, and what else are you seeing from the inside?
Yeah, so we are global leaders on plant-based burgers, right? I mean, we launched a partnership with Impossible Foods here in the US around almost probably like 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago. It started with a market test, which was very successful, and we started to roll out. It was very successful. We were like struggling even to with the supply chain to get it all done. And we expanded the product globally. We have different partners depending on the region you are in. We have a partnership with Unilever in vegetarian butcher in Europe. We have a different partnership in Latin America. But we launched in like more than 40 markets. And we are also adding to that like plant-based nuggets, plant-based chicken sandwiches, like depending on how advanced the market is on the plant-based journey. And I think that's the key word. I think it's a journey. I think, like, I remember being a kid back in Brazil and going to buy milk with my mom, and I would go to the shelf and it would have milk, like, and that was it. Like you buy milk, there is milk there. And today I go to the supermarket to buy milk and I get confused. There's so many like oat milk, right. Like all sorts of milk. And I don't know if it will get as fragmented and segmented as that. But it's here to stay, and it will continue to grow. I think that the growth of plant-based burgers, of plant-based in general, has been like higher than 15% per year, and it's a slow growth. You know, like I think that one of the key barriers for that type of product historically has been taste. the product tastes great, so that barrier doesn't exist. And I really like something that the founder from Impossible Food says, which is the cow is not getting better, but our product is. So I feel that over time there will be additional like health benefits or like nutritional benefits that plant-based will be able to offer. I don't think it's necessarily like I don't see it as a replacement. You know, like we are trying to cater to different types of guests that come to our restaurants. There are guests that prefer to have plant-based or that want to try plant-based. So we have that on the menu. We still sell much more of beef burgers than plant-based, but it's an option that's here, and I think it's here to stay.
I love that we get to hear baby in the
I
background.
hear that little guy.
I know, it's so cute.
I keep thinking the baby's in the restaurant.
I know. What's the baby doing in the restaurant? Shouldn't you be taking care of him? Oh, that's cute.
That's great. This is a question. It came from the audience, but I'm curious, and I'm sure all of our marketers on the call today are curious as well. And we can take a philosophical approach to this or data-based response to this. But in terms of measuring success and the metrics you apply in both of your organizations, in terms of like KPIs, again, philosophy, how do we integrate that into our organizations? Can you talk a little bit about how you both measure success?
I mean, for us, it's digital subscriptions.
Okay.
Sure. And so, I mean, ultimately it's revenue and profit, but it's the role that, you know, and in marketing's case, it's the role that we can play in driving digital subscriptions. Now, we're not the only part of the company that does that. You know, we have a product organization that also does that, but our role in doing that, and we look at everything short-term or long-term, even when we do things like things that are harder to straight line to immediate starts, like, you know, brand-driven television advertising. We still, in our own, you know, we still have a way that we look at it that says, do we believe that this is helping people figure out why they need to subscribe, and broadening the group of people who believe that they need to?
Yeah. So for us, I can give you like the overall, like these are the top metrics that we always look at. And I will do that. But reality is that it really depends on the objective of the action you're doing. Right? I mean, there are things that are more short term, there are things that are more long term. I think that overall, like the number that I look every day, twice a day, is sales, right? I mean, it's like same store sales these days. And I get on my cell phone globally, global sales breakdown per region twice a day. So we are very close to that number. I think in marketing, we also look at top 3 preference. This is a category that people tend to navigate towards different brands. So we always look at top 3 preference. I think these days we're looking a lot on digital sales because we're investing a lot behind that. But it really depends. You know, like sometimes you're doing an activity to make sure that that people perceive that you have better value. Value is one of the key drivers of the fast food category. Many times you're looking at profitability or franchisee profitability, because if the franchisee is not profitable, they will not going to open more restaurants. And so it really depends on what we are trying to achieve with that action. Sales it boils down to being like the most important one, because all the orders are kind of like enablers to that.
Sure. Makes sense. How do you see, just first talking about that coupon, how do you see coupons evolving and discounts and the types of promotional efforts evolving over the next year?
I see it getting more and more customized. You know, like I see it becoming smarter. I see us being more capable of linking incremental sales or more visitation by giving you the right offer at the right time for you. I think in the past, it was basically like a machine gun, all sorts of coupons to everyone in an FSI. I think that's how you call it, right? When you get on the newspaper. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think it evolved to be more segmented, but today we can segment by groups of one person, basically, right? I mean,
Right.
based on your history and the data that if we have a strong mobile app or loyalty or this or that. So I see it becoming much more effective, digital, triggering behavior change, and with a much greater ROI than printing paper and distributing on the daily newspaper.
Sure. Great. Yeah, thank you.
I'm happy I don't have to
Yes.
comment on the coupon question anymore.
I need to direct that at you, David.
You're bringing back memories.
Yeah, I know it's a very fascinating general. So, so David, this is one that is for you, and as we've talked about the truth and yes, truth as it relates to the journalist, but give me the truth on what it's like to be in media now in an election year, and is it fun? Is it exciting? Is it horrifying? Is it your worst nightmare? What do you mention that you work for the New York Times outside of?
The answer to all it's all those things you said. Yes. Look, I think there's so much in that question. The thing that you have to remember about our business is, people come to the news when they aren't sure what's going to happen in the world. That can be things that are very personal. That can be things that are very large and societal. It's both, right? And it all depends on the individual, and depends on the moment. And we've obviously in 2020, but frankly since 2016, had a lot of moments that have caused people to not be really sure what's going on and where things are going. And we see our job as, or the journalist's job is to seek the truth and to provide information that provides at least some insight to people as they try to make sense of all that, and to do it in a way that is true for, no matter what perspective you're coming to the news from. And so the elections are always powerful moments for national news organizations, but they are not uniquely that. And we will have, unless you believe that next year we'll have just pencil down certainty about what's going on in the world, there will be something that people are concerned about and are looking to journalism to help them make sense of. And so, again, election years are powerful moments, but there are always powerful moments that cause people to have an interest. And the more powerful that moment, we see the more they turn to trusted sources like the New York Times, that have a track record of that commitment. And they turn away from free sources, they turn away from whatever's in my feed, and places that you can't rely on in the same way to make sure you know what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a wonderful North Star. It's a place that you can go for that, because it's been tumultuous for a long time, and trying to find things you can trust, sources, and that's beautiful.
I think that's the point. I think we look, I don't want to downplay how unbelievably disconcerting 2020 has been, but it's definitely been heightened, and let's hope it doesn't repeat at this this level. At the same time, the underlying things that are causing a lot of this, concerns about our climate, concerns about how we relate to each other, none of these things are going away overnight.
Yeah. Which also brings up the fact that, and I know our audience is a very, very sophisticated audience, and they've probably already registered to vote, but everyone should register to vote. Make sure you get that done if you haven't already. or if you haven't voted already in some places, in a lot of places you can. So one of the requirements, and I don't know that we've met this yet, perhaps we have, but one of the requirements for Think Alike is that we say the word design at some point in time in this conversation. So I'm going to do that, and then also ask Fernando to talk about the design of a touchless restaurant and how that's going. It's a prototype, as I understand it, a complete touchless restaurant. It's a really fascinating thing to me, and seems to be blowing up in social media in some interesting ways. Give me some background on that.
Look, one of the things that excites me the most about the industry that I'm in is the fact that we own a space. You know, like on consumer goods, I always struggle with the idea of like working on packaging, label, and all this stuff for so long, and then you handle that to a supermarket, and then they put like at the bottom shelf, like covered in dust. So here we are on the space, and the restaurant image team and the design team are part of the marketing team. You know, so we have a very talented restaurant image team that the head of that team also handles everything that has to do with visual identity. And we've been like improving dramatically restaurant image for our three brands, for Tim Hortons, for Popeyes, and for Burger King. And because the team is so talented, I think that during the pandemic, they proactively started to think about how the footprint of the restaurants will evolve. You know, like because yes, like we are going to, David doesn't like the term digital transformation. I hate the term new normal. So like I think that after we go back to kind of like what it was before, because it's never going to be the same, the behaviors of people are probably going to change quite a bit. You know what I mean? Like delivery is here to stay. Some of the concerns will remain. So how does that impact the footprint of the restaurant space? So the team proactively took upon themselves to design a couple of options in terms of like restaurants that have either no dine-in or very small dine-in footprint, restaurants that have a smaller footprint in total, which is something good in terms of the investment that you have to make, restaurants that have 3-4 business that very strong drive-through, and you're probably going to become even stronger. Restaurants that have a pickup area that's almost like all automated. So really like design plus operations plus product development, all those teams coming together to create some very innovative prototypes. And we created like a couple of digital renderings, which is basically like what we are trying to build, what we're planning to build next year. It takes time to build because of permitting and all that, but we want to build a bunch of them, learn from that, which is usually what we do, right? I mean, we first build a couple, learn, you don't get everything right first time, and then scale from there. But that was all done internally by the Restaurant Brands International design team. We knew it would get some pickup when we announced, but the feedback has been tremendous. We got like almost 1 billion impressions immediately. It was like everywhere. Business Insider, Fast Company, they all covered the work. And kudos to the design and tech and development team who proactively took upon themselves like creating that vision that we are now making happen in the real.
Yeah. Did the New York Times cover it? Did the New York Times cover it?
The New York Times covers
totally.
The New York Times covers lots of things that we do. So we are very happy. And by the way, I always ask, like with our PR team, like, did the New York Times cover? They haven't this time. Like, okay, next time. But like that tends to be our like. I can call my mom. It's like it was on the New York Times. Like.
That's your barometer.
He knows that calling me is a great way to make sure we don't cover it. So,
right.
Yeah, I have no influence on any of that.
Right. It will not get covered. So, but a design question back to you, David. You have the advancement in digital and the things that I've seen in digital and what you've done, these experiments, the Mariano Rivera, the pitching showing where all his pitches went. That's the one that's in my head. It's the most epic and incredibly elegant. Look inside basically every single one of his pitches from when he started as a pitcher and showing where they all landed and everything else. Fascinating to me. So what role does design play in the New York Times? Because it's does it come in second to the word people?
I mean, look, design is critical to us. And the truth is in a digital product organization and a content organization, design is a plural word. We have the kind of stuff you're talking about is on the journalistic side. Well, I don't know if any of you saw, we did a thing on the Notre Dame Cathedral fire that was using very advanced photogrammetry and was actually one of the most watched pieces or interacted with pieces of journalism in any organization ever. And it was this complicated thing that but my personal view is only when you saw this, did you understand how close the cathedral came to falling. You read about it, but you didn't really feel it till you saw this thing that showed you, structurally what was happening and what could have happened and how close it got. And so I think that's the point on the journalistic side is that we don't do technology to do technology. We do technology because it helps you understand the world.
Yeah.
And if a different format or a designed experience helps you understand something different, then we're going to do it. And if it different and better, and if it doesn't, then we're not. And then, beyond that, we have the design of the actual sort of product experience, above the journalism. What's your app look like? When you open it, what's the website look like when you open it? Why is this something you want to check in with multiple times a day? And how does that create an experience that helps you understand the world? And so we've got, investments on the people side in all of those spaces. And, ultimately, we're a design or creative driven company that way. It's not just about the facts themselves, but presenting them in a way that makes it accessible and easy for people for how they live today.
Wonderful.
Right.
That's great.
I have one final question here, and if we're past our time, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask both of our guests, favorite book that you've read in the recent past or TV series that you could recommend to our audience here today? A little peek into the culture behind the cultural curtain. Who wants to answer that first?
I think I finished Netflix and Amazon Prime, so I feel very well
finished
equipped to
finished all of it. That's impressive.
Look, I wish I could tell you something that would make me look very smart and intellectual.
This is a fun question.
But to me, it's like when I'm watching Netflix, Amazon Prime, I'm trying to unwind. You know what I mean? So I strongly recommend, oh my God, I don't believe I'll say this, but I strongly recommend Cobra Kai. I think it's Netflix or Amazon. It all blends, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon.
It's Netflix. It is Netflix.
Yes.
Seen it.
It's a bit politically incorrect. I hope you don't get offended when you watch, but I thought it was highly entertaining.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, as
David.
As I said, I have two girls who are 12 or almost 13 and 9, and so our family quest is something that all four of us can watch, that all of us enjoy, and don't just and that at least one or more of us isn't suffering through. We also got a COVID puppy in this process, who also needs to enjoy the programming or at least not distract us while it's happening. So the program we've been watching is actually something called Pick of the Litter. It's a documentary series, and it is about how dogs become seeing eye dogs. And so it's sort of part reality show, part documentary, but like, who doesn't want to see cute puppies helping the world? And actually it turns out that most dogs who go through the program don't make it. It's actually very hard to be a seeing eye dog. It probably doesn't surprise you when you think about it. Yeah, somebody seems to be agreeing. And it's feel good. It's It's educational. You know, a lot of things I didn't know about how that process works, and ultimately, it's about making the world a better place. And my future is there's actually a volunteer job for when seeing eye dogs are first, you know, entering the program as tiny puppies. There's a role called a cuddler, which is a human who, because the dog isn't with its parent, with its mother, as long as you'd want it to be. And so they literally just cuddle the puppy.
Who doesn't want that job?
Seriously,
so that's my future.
Love it. That's great.
Wow, what a job. Wow. I love the pants optional questions that are coming up, which we're not going to answer or require you to answer, only because we run out of time, and I want to respect the hour that we asked of you. And I want to thank you, David and Fernando, for an amazing Think and Link. This was wonderful, very insightful. And thank you for doing this. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. And we'll try to answer these questions in other formats and other ways if possible.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Guys, we appreciate it.
Thank you all.